I gotta say, this is a color I'm really down for. You'll get that in a second. Let's look at number 26 by Farrow and Ball. We got the code, now let's get to cracking. This is a series all about breaking down a color in detail, and the one we're looking at today is a dramatic lead gray by Farrow and Ball called Downpipe. What's great about this paint company in particular is they do not shy away from dynamic and deep colors. What also makes them quite different, and you probably know this if you saw our spotlight video on Farrow and Ball, is the fact that all of their paint comes pre-mixed at the factory. No in-store tinting required. Particularly interesting about this color is how it got its name. It's literally supposed to represent downpipes and downspouts and guttering that was used in the UK. And a lot of these colors by Farrow and Ball have a really nice historical tie to them, where the original owners tried to replicate all the different colors that were used in historic architecture. Now, even though this color is meant to represent the same type of gray you'd see in a lead pipe, it has a surprising amount of complexity with its earthy, bluish undertone happening, and this would only be accentuated by both blue sunlight and interior LED or even fluorescent lighting. Also, if it's used in any rooms that are away from the sun at some point during the day, when you get a lot of that shade, again, you'll get even more of that blue touch coming through. It's also a significantly dark color with an LRV right around the 15 mark, and although Farrow and Ball doesn't explicitly say it on their website, well, we can sort of guesstimate its light reflectance value based on similar colors in other companies, like Glidden Grey Tabby or Benjamin Moore's Color Stories palette color, Arctic Seal. These colors are not identical, but they're similar enough where we can draw pretty accurate and clear comparisons. Assuming Downpipe is going to be your wall color, what would make a good trim color in this case? If you saw our video on Farrow and Ball's Hague Blue, it's Hague, not Hag. See, I'm learning. Then you'll know that whenever we're dealing with darker colors, it's worth your consideration to also continue that color onto your trim with an appropriate trim paint, of course. This is also the case here, but because we're kind of over that 10 LRV threshold, I find Downpipe to be soft enough of a dark gray where it won't be completely jarring if you opted for a lighter trim color. Farrow and Ball recommends Dimps as a complementary white, which I think is a pretty fantastic choice. It's also not really an off-white, but more of a light gray. It has some cooler undertones as well, much like Downpipe, but it's also pretty dependent on how warm or cool your interior lighting is. That'll definitely be the main determining factor in regards to which direction this color goes in. It also has a coloration more akin to stainless steel, which fits well with Downpipe's lead aspect. But I will say, don't be afraid to go a bit lighter with your trim, or even warmer. Strong White by Farrow and Ball fits that classification, although it can still feel a tiny bit cool leaning as well, but definitely possesses much more warm undertones than the previously mentioned Dimps. The LRV is going to be much higher here, around 85, and this makes it a paint that is closer to white visually, and it might be a good choice for something that continues throughout your entire home, so you're not limited to just light gray trim everywhere. Some really strong color pairings that I see incorporated with Downpipe are reds and greens, which are conveniently complementary colors. So whether you use these colors in the form of paint or even just features like green plant life, it's gonna look nice. Incorporating a rich red like eating room red specifically helps accentuate the cool aspect found in Downpipe. This will really invigorate the space that you use it in, whether it's in an adjacent eating or dining room, or in the form of accessories within that same room. These two will definitely play in a little more complementary push-pull nature, but the results can be pretty striking because of that. On the other hand, by going with a cooler color that incorporates some green and even some blue, much like the color literally called green blue, this accomplishes a few things. You add a fresh pop of airiness and freshness to whatever space you're using it in, while still having a color that's quite saturated, but you also help coordinate with Downpipe's cooler undertone, making it feel a little more neutral and closer to the lead gray it was inspired by. So there's less of a complementary interaction and more of a coordinating cohesiveness happening. And this is probably a pairing that I would have, one being the more prominent color and the other being the accent or the lesser used color, whichever way you decide to arrange the two. With Downpipe, however, what is my perfect use case for it? Where would I more likely use it? Normally, with these darker dynamic colors, the safe answer would be to use it in smaller doses, in the form of accent walls or maybe a nice piece of furniture. but I would challenge you all to think outside the box a bit here, and maybe use this color more heavy-handedly. It's dark, but not to the point where it'll appear black on the walls, and yes, it has a cooler undertone to it, but it's not gonna feel blue, it's not gonna have an overly bright and dynamic color hue coming through. It is a gray at the end of the day. It'll just have that subtle, cool touch in the undertones. I could absolutely see this working in full rooms, but it could also look pretty wonderful in certain stylized hallways that perhaps utilize a lot of wainscoting and woodwork, some board and batten, sort of a modern twist on a fairly historic, traditional color. For something even cooler, and I'm really just speaking about the literal color hue here, this is me talking about Hague Blue by Farrow and Ball, which you can get more information on just by clicking that little rectangle over there. Let us know if you want more Farrow and Ball colors because they really have a wonderful little collection to speak on. See ya.